I'm joined by Carl Pratt, founder of Future Planet. Thank you so much for joining me, Carl.
Hi, thanks for welcoming me. Nice to share the morning with you.
It is nice to share the morning. And the way I like to start these conversations is really by laying some groundwork in terms of the problem, ultimately, that you and Future Planet are solving.
It's a great question.
Thank you.
Broadly, the vision with Future Planet is that beyond politics, beyond business, beyond all of that, beyond the systems that we currently find ourselves in today, we individually have the power to create and build the world that we want to live in. And whether that be our inner selves, whether that be our family units, whether that be our social structures, our communities, wherever, our countries, the whole world, it's in our power. We choose the structures that govern us, but we can also choose to build the ones that we want to have to experience. But that to do that, we can't just desire it or want it. We have to be able to have a meticulous, inclusive strategy that we act on and that we use to deliver that plan. And so Future Planet is a platform and a community that's designed to inspire and empower us to unite together and to co-create that future. And it has been co-created with so many people so far, around what that vision is. And it's taken many forms because different people have different needs and different people have different goals and objectives, and different people are working on different parts of the problem. So, you might, as an individual, you might be working as part of a team in an organization, you might be working on your own in an organization. You might just care about what you buy as a citizen. You might be a passionate, purposeful person that is really keen to make a difference. There's a whole myriad of shapes and forms we take at different times. And my view is that it's how we unite together and how we support each other, how we're in service of each other to deliver our individual and collective missions. That's what Future Planet is, and we design and build different things to support people to come together around that. But if you were to ask us to our mission statement,
yeah,
to accelerate our transition to an inclusive, sustainable future. Like I see, as an organization and as a collective and as a community, the question that we're asking is how can we get further forward faster towards that vision of a future that we all desire? And this, for me, at Future Planet's always been what's outside of what's already been done. Like, what can we, it's the space of collaboration where there's often not a budget line for collaboration. It's the space where community exists. It's the space for feelings to exist.
Mm-hmm.
Where, if you have a business model for I'm going to allow people to feel love, that's not it's a great business model. Like the best one ever, but it's not often the one that exists, right?
Yeah, it's hard to measure ROI on that.
Yeah, exactly. But actually, it's the most powerful one that we can have. So, Future Planet exists to be the spaces that are not yet filled, and those are often, for me, the most exciting spaces, whilst also supporting people in the day-to-day.
So, one thing I really like what you said is that we, as individuals, have the power to create and build the future.
Yeah.
So you highlighted individuals, and you may have said it. I don't actually remember you saying the word community yet, which I find really interesting, because one thing that I'm learning as I talk to a lot of people is that a lot of people who are in sustainability really believe in the power of the individual as it relates to the community and to the greater whole. I think we're all in this together as far as the planet, like we all live on it. It's all our home. And so as individuals, we need to do our part to contribute.
Yeah.
So I think it's really, really cool that that's how you're leading with what you said is a big part of Future Planet's mission, is this notion that the individual holds the power.
That's interesting. So thank you for allowing us to explore this piece. So I feel like it depends on what term you want to use individual, So when I talk about individual in that respect, I mean, you know, one person, one vote, like as in like we vote for the systems that we want, we vote for the parties that we want, we vote for people that we believe are going to deliver us what we desire in our society, or, you know, the roads, the bins, like the education system, all of that. And so when I talk about us individually there, I think individually we all have the power based on how we act and what we choose to do.
Mm-hmm.
But my firm belief is that it's through community that we can create and build that, because you know, it's how we connect together, how we serve each other, how we support each other. Because often this is really difficult stuff, you know, to manifest this beautiful world that we desire, because we've got to, in many ways, fight against an existing system where the rules structure and the value structure and the principles of that system are not fit for purpose. You know, they're not often inclusive, and they're not often sustainable or regenerative or anything that we would need. And so whilst the power comes from the individual, whilst we do have much more power as individuals than we perhaps ever realize, it's only through the collective that we can really realize that power. It's only when we come together, and it's about coming together in that way, you know, in a very systematic and structured way. So one of the ways that I believe that we can all add value to each other is through uniting together across systems, across silos, across sectors, and supporting each other in that way. Like I see Future Planet as being united around values of love, kindness, empathy. These are things that we can all agree are really a very good thing to feel individually, but also collectively.
Yep.
But also principles, so to live in balance and harmony with the planet. Like, it doesn't really matter what religion you're from. Like that's, you know, broadly we would say those are good things to agree and align on, you know. And so that the vision that I have and that we're delivering is, okay, so imagine if we welcomed people that felt resonant with that mission, that were in key roles in key organizations. So it's an intentional community, you know. So in what that really means for us is head of innovation or brand, you know, head of sustainability managers and territory, C-suite, whatever those marketing brand, whatever those key roles in those key organizations are, or champions, people that are really passionate about it that might have a different role. You know, the vision for Future Planet is we welcome and actively go and find at least 1, 5, 10, 15, 20 different people in every organization that fit that role, right? Positive, purposeful, proactive, making change happen. And that it's through uniting that group, that community, and really supporting them to scale up change, that's, you know, that it's through that influence that we can collectively make it go much faster. But then the other part of the strategy for me is around building a community of citizens that also wish that world or desire that world in a different way. And it's how we unite both of those activators, basically. It's always individual, but it's always community as well. Like it's both.
And when you say unite and kind of work together, what exactly is it that, first of all, how do you actually unite people?
Yeah, that's a good question. How do you unite people? I didn't know the answer. I still, you know, a lot of it I don't know now. I didn't know the answer when I started this. And these are my thoughts and feelings. But I would caveat all of this by, my sense is the best way to unite people is to meet them where they are and to ask them what they need. And but one also requires a sense of purpose and a sense of direction, you know. And so Future Planet was a lot of listening, you know, a lot of listening. Like, it makes me feel emotional now how much listening, you know, and then also removing ego and like just a wide range of processes, but ultimately that comes down to like just meeting people where they are and understanding what they need. And so we have what that developed into is 3 ways with which I feel that we can connect to each other and we can connect as a community together. So personally, professionally, and purposefully. And so personally for me is do I feel loved? Do I feel supported? Do I feel safe? Do I feel heard? Do I feel like I'm with a group of people that they've got me. They're people that I can share stuff that's important to me, and that they'll support me with that, you know. And where I feel like being of service to them as well. Like that's you know, and that for me goes beyond the normal. So it's not like, oh, have you got, do you know a good software platform for doing whatever? It's not just that, right? In fact, that's not to do with that at all. It's to do with like, how's your family? I noticed that you might be feeling a bit tired at work today. How's everything going? You know, and deeper than that, because that's really where connection comes, when you really understand the context of someone's life and you really empathize with that. You know? And then professionally, like, what are you trying to solve at work? Like, what are you doing that's important to you? And that could be, you know, as a member of a green team, or it could be someone working tirelessly to transform an organization where you're the only sustainability person, or where you've suddenly got like a bit of momentum, and suddenly your senior leaders in the organization are understanding what it is, and you now have to work out how to solve problems with them. You know? Or it could be that you're working as part of an established sustainability team or a brand manager. There's a whole range of different roles there, right? But my view is most times, in most places, in most ways, something's been solved somewhere. And through coming together and through connecting together and sharing support in that way, it's much quicker, you know? Oh, I've noticed that someone's doing that here. Let's see how we can make that relevant to me. So we create environments where people can come together and share that knowledge. Intentional environments, like intentional. We actively go and find people and understand what they need, and go and find other people that have had similar challenges or can support them. And for me, it's about giving and receiving, right? Like, we're always, sometimes we're supporting, sometimes we're receiving support. And then the final part is, what's our collective purpose? Like, why are we all in this? Like, what motivates us? And most of us want to live in a world where we feel like we can all thrive, you know, where we don't see people sleeping homeless on the street. We don't experience the impact of fast fashion. Like, we have a balanced world where everyone can thrive, where we're in balance and harmony with each other and the planet. You know, that's certainly for Future Planet. That's it. How do we find everyone that thinks that way? Let's get them all together. You know, that's the goal. And so it's that purpose that then unites beyond what people can achieve personally and professionally. It's like, actually, there are some things that we really need to be joined up on that we can only achieve if we're together, right? And that comes down to things like acting on policy in a proactive way, not a reactive way. It comes down to really understanding what the gaps are, what we need to create for those gaps in terms of moving faster. It comes down to probably a fund, like, how are we going to have a people's fund, which we can just fund stuff that we need. And in that respect, I would highlight, like, I don't know, I was just reading about Ecuador, which has had successive funding from China over the last, I don't know how many years, but China's been investing in the infrastructure. Ecuador requires that. And now I was reading an article, and I'm happy for it to be qualified. It would be helpful if it was, that China is going to invest, or a Chinese oil company is now going to invest in Ecuador. And what that means is a reduction of Ecuador's forests. Well, I mean, you know, that happens. But my view is, wouldn't it be amazing if we, as a human people, like as a global community, could say, actually, do you know what, we'd much rather that didn't happen. And Ecuador, we really love the fact that you want to develop, so let's collectively invest in you. And I think that happens to a certain extent, and it definitely happens with a range of different people. I don't see so many transparent individual people being able to come together and invest in something in a very clear and transparent way as to that's the problem that we've identified, and that's what we want to do to solve it. I see it happening, but I think there's still space for lots more of it to happen.
It's challenging. I mean, something like that on a grand scale, I mean, if we're taking this Ecuador example and going forward with it, that would be challenging. I mean, how do you I think there are a couple of issues with that, right? So first of all, it's the whole not in my backyard situation. What's that? NIMBY, as they call it. Like Ecuador, you know, sitting here in London or in the UK is so far away, and whether or not, for most people, I mean, whether or not the forests there get cut down, it doesn't really affect my life at all. So that would be one challenge. Second of all, why would I want to spend money as an individual, just like as a global citizen, I suppose? Why would I want to spend money to save someone else's forest when I need to save for my retirement, or I need to buy food and clothes and stuff? It's I think it's a great idea. It's challenging to and I think this is like the overall challenge with environment, just protecting the environment, and this whole idea of climate change and everyone doing their part to fix things, is that it's such a big global problem that, and this comes back to that idea of every individual counts, because as an individual, it doesn't feel like if I'm going to chip in £10 or $10 to Ecuador's infrastructure, that's actually going to have any significant impact on my life or well-being. And it kind of feels like I'm just tossing money just throwing money away almost, so it's
Yeah.
how, and
Nice.
it's how
You
do you,
want to unpack it? I mean, we can unpack it if you
yeah,
like.
how do you, I guess, and maybe this is exactly what your communities do when you put together your Future Planet events, is how do you solve that issue? How do you get across the urgency and the importance, and this idea that actually you are not throwing away $10 or £10, you're
Yeah.
actively investing in your future as an individual?
So I love that last statement. That really resonates, right? And like this started with me thinking, wouldn't this be a good idea? And then like, I don't know, a number of years later, like you can't, you're right. You can't just go to people and say, let's do this, because it's actually much more complicated than that. Like it requires so much, just requires so much in terms of in infrastructure internally and energy, a range of things to manifest that vision. But I feel like, so I mostly I've just had a question along the way, and we've not got it perfectly yet. We've just been doing steps in terms of how we might do that. But my question is, how do we do that? Like that's what I want to do. That would be an undoubtedly good thing. Let's do that. And I feel like there's two parts to this that really help to, if we unpack it. One is, imagine if we had that.
Okay.
Like imagine if, for example, 1% of humans paid £70 million a month because they forget about whether they could find it. Just imagine if, and we could then use that money to direct the flow of other capital, but it would be the people's money for the planet, basically. And it would be a signification that it was for the people, by the people, or for the planet, by the planet. Because I don't think a lot of the time we get that notion, right? Like politics is bent often. Like you vote for someone and then they make a set of rules that are connected to a whole load of other things that are in many ways outside of our control.
Yep.
Petitions are not that effective. They're relatively good at signaling, and they have been quite effective in the last few months, but ultimately they're not the most effective tool. We don't have complete control over where our taxes go, for example. And I mean, our taxes per month are much more than £10 a month. And I think it's often corrupted by other interests that are bigger than our own. And I think we're really noticing that now in this time. Like people with more wealth and more money are able to bend what they want to do and manifest in the world. And that could be having satellites put all over the world. It could be vaccines, but it could be also other things, right? I'm not saying either of those are good or bad, but I'm just saying that like if you have a lot of money, you can basically do many more things. So what that ultimately ends up happening is people that don't have that much money will end up often falling outside of the net, or receiving less in the general balance of the world. And so my view is that there's a few things around it, right? One is we're ever more interconnected than we ever have been before. And I think we know that now. Not only has coronavirus clearly and explicitly showed us that, but we also know through our understanding of supply chains and where our food comes from and all of these other elements that we can't exist in the UK if we're not looking after people that live in other countries. It just doesn't, system doesn't happen. So what's happened now is many of us knew that before, but many of us are also experiencing the stresses of that. So there's two ways we could go right now. We could become more secluded, more nationalistic, or we could become a combination of really understanding and supporting ourselves whilst also being much more inclusive and much more empathetic. And my view is that it's the balance of both of those, and that's the way to go. So if we've established that actually we're much more interconnected, we do know that we need to be able to support everyone in the world. You know, for oceans, air, these things, they don't just happen in one country. They're global. You know, we are interconnected. So if we've established those things, it then just comes down to a couple of factors. What am I interested in? Like, what's passionately aligned with me?
Mm-hmm.
What do we need? Like, what's mission critical for planet Earth? And that's really key, you know? And then, like, what can I have, what is easy for me to give, you know? What do I feel that within my wealth, whether that be time or money, what can I give? And my view is it doesn't matter what you can give. Anything's good, you know? But if anything's good for 70 million people, suddenly you then start to have something that becomes quite good. There's no shortage of capital in the world. There's no shortage of money. There's no shortage of money moving to do things.
Right.
You know, and so I feel like the combination of money and intent, and the intent can be whatever you choose.
Mm-hmm.
That's a really important mixture. You know, that suddenly becomes a really strong market signal. But also what we can do with that is we can start to build things that don't necessarily existingly have a budget line or have an existing market need. You know, so what we've noticed with a lot of the this is on topic. A lot of the loans that have come out of governments supporting people during coronavirus have gone to companies that can basically service those loans. You know, companies that are strong and capable of repaying those loans. And a lot of the money has gone towards organizations and companies from government that perhaps, you know, that maybe need it, like airlines. But also, one has to also ask, like, there is a lot of people that are not receiving quite so much. You know, there's a lot of imbalances in that system, I see anyway, where either charity is plugging the gap or people are coming forward and plugging the gap. You know, or where we're basically fixing the system, you know, like a beaver with an overflowing dam. Well, that's sort of not that fit for purpose as a general structure. And my view is that we require a people's organization that's supporting other people or organizations that are already working to do well, and finding out where the gaps are and also doing those, but that is really with the people's intent.
And where do you fit into that? Because a big part of what you do is bring people together. I mean, you have a lot of events, and especially if you go to your website. I mean, right now, currently with coronavirus, obviously things are slightly different.
Yeah.
And in general, say it again.
I mean, we've evolved it, but yeah, a little bit different.
So I'm curious to know on a more kind of day-to-day basis, because right now we're talking really, really big picture. I'm curious to know and I love big picture ideas, so I can hang out in that sphere for a very long time. I'm curious to know on a more kind of day-to-day level, how do you, Carl, bring people together and make that money plus intent? I mean, I think you're absolutely right. That's a very powerful equation. And you have a wide network, you put together these events. And like you said, what you do is you have very intentional events, and you're very intentional when you bring people together by finding out what people want. So what does all of that mean when there is no coronavirus and no COVID-19, and you're actually able to physically bring people together into
well,
a room?
I think it doesn't. So that's a really nice question. I liked the first 75% of it, and then and the second 25%, I would just slightly like evolve. So, and if we just deal with that first, then we can talk about what we're doing now, right?
Okay.
Like, so I feel like it's just choosing how we gather. And it doesn't like so gathering online, offline, it's not the thing, right? It's just choosing how we gather. And then it's also the purpose with which we're gathering. Mm-hmm. So climate change has not evaporated, you know, like the challenges are still existing around the environment. And in fact, if not, perhaps we're seeing more of what could happen when climate change really takes hold. And if we were given this wonderful opportunity to really feel and appreciate how challenging that will be for so many people. And what that means is actually so many people, not us, you know, this is people that have got a lot less than us. We just had to evolve how we gather, mm-hmm. and we just had to evolve the purpose with which we did that. But what I really noticed and appreciated was that we can suddenly get much more reach. And so before, whereas we'd bring people together in a physical environment and we would do some digital or some content, now it's the other way around, but that suddenly means that we can accelerate what we're looking to achieve and do and how we're supporting people. My view is people still need the elements of what community provides them, even if they can't intrinsically meet in person. So like that feeling of togetherness, that feeling of being loved, that feeling of being supported, that, you know, maybe it's tactical, like, can I meet this person, or I'm looking for a job, or I don't have this or that. That's all solved by who you know and how you come together. You know?
Absolutely.
And so what my role is and how I can be of service is to understand the way to do that with other people that is the most bestest way, you know, the funnest way, or the one that feels like the most rewarding or the most successful and productive, you know. And that's I think that's the mix that we got relatively right with live events, although we hadn't quite got to that point where we were like completely taking off. We tested a load of things. And I think now, like, what this moment has given me is the opportunity to really just notice all the things that weren't working that well, like move them to the side, and just propose a new way of doing and way of being. And so I decided to prioritize the mission over the money, and to go for speed and scale, or to go for speed and scale of support, you know, rather than we had a lot of conversations that were going well, but kind of getting stuck. And we're going to do a process. So we are, so I really like the Build Back Better campaign. I really noticed that as being something good, but I also understand that a lot of different people have a view of what better is. I just remembered the question you asked me what my role is. I think that's it. My role is like to be of service, to keep on understanding how to support people, to keep on like holding that vision and that mission in my intention, and to then work out how to to overcome myself to be able to put enough energy into the mission so that we can manifest that, you know. And right now, what that means for me is learning and how to give up everything for everyone, you know, so that it can become a collectively owned thing rather than something that is created by a small group of people, with me as a heart, you know, with me as a seed, you know. And so that's what's been really exciting about this year, is going through and understanding and learning how to go through that process. Because I think that's what Extinction Rebellion did beautifully. It tapped into everyone's desire. And I love it. It's been great. But what I've noticed is it's a good organization, and I really respect and appreciate it. It's just a different vision and a different way of approaching solving it than Future Planet is. And so, but the parts of it that I love, it's been about learning how to allow that to happen with flow, you know, how to allow people's passion and purpose to flow intentionally into something. So that's what I feel like the next 6 months will be, is like, as you can see, my eyes are a bit puffy, sleepless nights, like processing that and problem solving on that.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, Extinction Rebellion is quite a different way of moving forward than, you know, in your URL, you're using the word love. And I think Extinction Rebellion, both you and Extinction Rebellion, without going too far into the weeds here, you have in some ways a very similar end goal. I suppose the way that you're approaching it is from slightly different angles. And going back to that idea of what is better, you know, that's kind of like, how do you take their mission versus, like you said, a capitalist mission versus your mission versus XYZ people's mission, or vision rather, and how do you bring it all together in something that's harmonious and where everyone wins?
Yeah, I think I mean, Extinction Rebellion was fantastic. It moved the Overton window for all of us, but also you know, it's worth noting, Extinction Rebellion is the sum of a group of people. You know? So it's really it wasn't, you know, it's like a banner, right? actually what Extinction Rebellion was a lot of people saying, we really want this to be different. And that was just the banner that was chosen. And I think that's important. And it was really helpful to have that banner. And there's lots of reasons why it worked.
Yeah.
Also very tactical, and hugely inspirational for so many of us, because of course it was about individuals inspiring each other. That was what was often happening. It was the human stories of children being out like with placards or whatever they might have been, right? It was people. Ultimately, it was people moving in that way. And my view is that it will require all of us to be leaders in many different ways. And it's the sum of all of our influence in many different ways that is what will make us successful. My only caveat on that is, let's make sure that we're doing the thing that is the most important. Let's make sure that our hierarchy of impact is in the right way. Let's make sure our frame of influence is in the right way. Let's make sure that when we're acting with that intent, when we're all being leaders, that we're leading with empathy, with inclusivity, with love, with kindness, with all of those elements that are required. And I feel like that it's not different, because a lot of the people that come to Future Planet events are also part of Extinction Rebellion, but it's certainly different in like the way that I believe that we're growing Future Planet from that heart center. It's different. Like I don't think you will never, like, I'm not going to super glue myself to the shell building, even if I think that oil's obviously not the way forward. Like, we're much more likely to work to transform those organizations and support those change makers that are doing really difficult work, but we couldn't operate in our modest and humble way unless there were really strong activators pushing other narratives. You need all these different bits to make the change happen, because different people and different things respond to different stimulus.
Yeah, I think you bring up a really good point. I mean, this whole super glue to the shell building or to an airplane or whatever it is. I think the challenge with doing it that way is, in some ways we tend to forget, I suppose, that the world still runs on many of these products and services that these companies provide, whether or not we like it. And if all of a sudden every single oil company in the world just shut off, hospitals would stop running, there would be no more food. We would have to scramble for a long time to get to a point where the life we currently live can resume, because of the way that the system works. And I think you're absolutely right. What we need to do, the way I see it, is rather than just turning off all of the oil and just saying, right, we're going to just see what happens and wait. I think it's really important to, like you said, support and encourage. And I mean, using the words that you were using earlier, show love almost, and reward these companies for transitioning. I don't think, personally, I don't think it makes sense to it's not black or white. I just can't see feasibly you turn off oil today and then 10 minutes later you turn on only renewable energy everywhere in the world. We're just too ingrained. I think what we can do is, as a group, as a community, we can work on more effectively and efficiently making that transition. And I think maybe that's what we should.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I totally agree with that. But I also feel like this moment now is a unique moment in time where we're noticing, actually, maybe we don't need some of the things that we're using. Maybe we don't all need to fly all the time. Maybe we don't all need to travel all the time. Maybe we don't need these different elements. And so my sense is that the transition will be a combination of different factors, and it's up to us to work out what to do to accelerate those different ones. But I'm not, just by saying I'm acting with love doesn't mean I'm soft, right? Like, I don't believe that these companies, I don't believe many companies are investing enough in that transition fast enough. I think a lot of companies are doing really well at saying they're going to do really well. And I think there's a lot of hard miles to cover to get that to happen. And I think that there are a lot of frameworks in place that are really good, but I think we've all known over some time that that takes quite some time to get the results from that.
Mm-hmm.
And ultimately, you get some leaders, but you also get a lot of laggards as well, you know. And so we need effective policy to create an even playing field. We need, we need to focus on really what's going to accelerate and what counts. And we need a lot more radical investment. And that challenge is probably the top in terms of what shareholders perceive when they can start to receive value. But it's so intrinsically linked to pension funds and other elements that there's a part there that I don't fully understand, that I would love to get to understand. How do we unlock that change? And like all super wicked problems, they're so interconnected. But what I do know is that there is definitely places that we can work out what to focus on to accelerate further, faster, forward. Is that right? Forward, further, faster, whatever. We can go there quicker. And I think that there are, like, the levels of investment that are being made is too little, And I think what COVID has shown us is when we really care about something, gosh, if only that was the same for everything, we can really move money really quickly, and we can really move intent really quickly. And I feel the opportunity spaces now is to very quickly work out like what the landscape is in this new world. What's working, what's not working, what is really important to focus on that will get us to that inclusive, sustainable future, and then how can we maintain that momentum of investment on those particular challenges. And beyond that, like, I will bring people together to ask that question to. And I'm sure there's lots of people smarter than me that already have many of those answers, and that I don't need to know them. It would be useful to understand them within the context of what we're doing as a global community.
Mm-hmm.
What I'm really happy is if, I don't know, maybe this is a constant desire to understand, but I see the gaps. I'd be really happy if people say, no, we've got that, leave us alone, we're doing this really well, go and solve another problem. Great, right? But my sense is there'll be some that are happening like that, some that require some help, and there'll be big gaps of space where like that nothing's happening, and one of those I've noticed for us is like beyond the leaders. Like, what's happening beyond the leaders? Like, and I say leaders, by that I mean we might consider IKEA to be a leader in this current world, right? But what are other companies doing to make that transition, and how are we supporting other, individuals and organizations? What are Sports Direct doing? How are we supporting people in Sports Direct to make that change? And I think that's a big space that will always need like a lot of support.
Yeah, I think one thing I'm certainly seeing and learning the more I'm speaking to, as you call them, change makers, is I'm seeing there's a lot of, when you really start to invest in sustainability as a company, especially, and you start really looking for opportunities and for areas where you can be sustainable, oftentimes there's actually quite a big cost savings to you as a business, because frequently it means doing things a little bit in a more clever fashion, maybe reusing certain elements or investing into some type of infrastructure or product or system that allows you to, in the long term, save a lot of money. And so I think with some of these companies that you mentioned where there is that big gap, I think the opportunity there, this is just a bit of a hypothesis and a guess, is showing these companies that the current business practices aren't as profitable as a business practice that is more sustainable. And I think the important thing is to lead with that financial element, because ultimately a business cares about making money, typically. And so if you're able to show, here's how it can affect, your profit and your margins, and what you share with your shareholders. And by the way, it's sustainable, so you can add that in too. I think there's an opportunity there for making change and for leading these big corporations that fill that are in that gap that you're mentioning.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. It's what do we feel like we want around us, and how do we feel like we want our world to be, and what brings us joy, what brings us delight, what makes us feel good when we understand the whole of something. And I think people will choose organizations and companies that make them feel good about what they're doing. So Allbirds committing to doing carbon labeling, yes, awesome, fuck yeah, right? Like suddenly, like that becomes exciting for people that like Allbirds, and maybe more people will discover them, or maybe other people will choose to do that. And I feel like it is commercial, and I think that will bear out in how well people use or utilize or transform their companies to be of service in all ways, not just in one way. But ultimately it will bear out in what world do we want to live in. And I think that's been the transition for me recently. It's like, it's not just the money, it's like, what are you making? Like, what does your company do? How is it of service? Does it need to exist? Is it relevant? Are you making it in a good way? Do you have a really good connection with your community? Do your community, are they completely supportive of everything you do because they love the way you do it? And it's probably the you comes down to the people in that organization, can I connect directly to those people that are making a change? Mm-hmm. And do I feel connected to them? And I think that's when we move beyond process and into something a bit deeper, and I think that's where I feel like there's true transformation. And I guess it would be the blend of like a lot of these local and smaller services like Hisby or Oddbox or whatever they are that currently serve us, and like the connection that we have with them. And actually life is much nicer when you have that kind of interaction, but it's how we achieve that at scale. That's the challenge. Like that's the crux of it. Like, how do we make mobile phone companies like Hisby? And Hisby is a local supermarket, by the way. Yeah, anyway, so I think it's partly money, but it's so many other of factors of good feeling,
Yeah.
In fact, if we just measure on money, we failed.
Well, that's what B Corp.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
that's what they're all about. And so, Carl, as we're starting to wrap up here, one thing that I want to make sure people are aware of. So, where can people who are interested in learning more about you and about Future Planet? You had something to say.
No, that's a good thing to wrap up on.
Oh, yeah.
So, you can go to futureplanet.love, but also, if you're listening to this, it's now, what day of the month is it? What date is it?
24th of April.
24th of April. So if you're listening to this between the 24th of April and about the end of July, then come and join us to imagine what the future will be and what we're going to build. But I would imagine you could probably go to futureplanet.love and work out how to go from there. Or you can reach out to me personally.
Awesome. And is there any social media places for people to visit and follow you?
Probably. But I can't remember what they are.
I'm sure it's all on the website. Very good.
If you search Future Planet and look for colors and happy people, then you'll find it.
You found the right place. You found your colorful, happy people to be part of.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, Carl, thank you very much. It's been a really fun conversation. I like how we went down all sorts of rabbit holes. I think the work you're doing is really cool. I love the collaboration. I love the community that you're building. I love the fact that you're bringing a lot of great people who are working hard to heal the planet and to fix some of these challenges and think through these issues. You're bringing them together and creating a future planet of love and of health and happiness.
Thanks, Daniel. I really appreciate you welcoming me to share, and I've really enjoyed connecting and sharing. And were they rabbit holes? I feel like they were just like good solid discussion and connection. Right?
Yeah, it's great.
Nice.
It's perfect. Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Thank you very much for listening to this episode. If you enjoyed it, give us a 5-star rating. And also, please subscribe, whether on your podcast app or on YouTube. And that way you can be the first to know about new episodes. Thank you very much, and talk to you soon.